Thank you, Maddie, and thank you, Stockholm, and thank you, Alf. And what Maddie said about questions, of course, also goes for our next speaker, who aims to be a leader of that necessary transformation into a more productive and sustainable industry, perhaps even, to quote Alf Rehn, to make innovation truly matter again. Last year at the BIM Summit, she provided insights into the upcoming digitization strategy for Statsbygg, Norway, and the strategy of sustainable development at Statsbygg. Today, she's here to talk about how she and they worked to make this strategy a reality, not just word, and the need of involving people in that very process. Please welcome the Director of Digitalization and Development at Statsbygg, Norway, Cathrine Mørch.
Thank you. And to bring this from a boring professor to a more exciting industry expert, this is going to be a great 20 minutes. That's correct. I was here last year talking about how we were planning a strategy process, and now I'm here to talk about where we are and how to implement it, going from strategy to reality. Before we start, I think we have all seen this slide a couple of times before, and I think that we all agree that this is something we don't like. It states that we are low on productivity and we are digital laggards. And I'm happy to hear that many of you guys see yourselves as the solution, or at least a part of the solution. But this is a reality, and it also shows a huge possibility. Some estimates are that bringing in new technology, new competence, and innovation in our industry will provide a productivity rise by 5 to 10%. And what I'm here to talk about today is also that you need to understand that that also comes with the needed investments level in order to unleash that potential. You need to go from talking about it to doing it. And that is what we are now doing at Statsbygg. And on an industry level, I think Alf also stated this in his exit of his presentation, is that I believe that we all feel and are very agreed upon the shared ambitions. We need to ensure a more sustainable industry, and there are also some potential regarding efficiency. And there is one shared enabler, even though we call it digitalization, innovation, development, we need to think new about how we do things. So what we did last year, 1 year ago, is to start to understand better the surrounding around the things that surround Statsbygg. And I don't think this is going to be a huge game changer, but what we saw is that, of course, the two drivers for change will be technology and sustainability. There will be new demands on us as a public builder, but also on the industry. We cannot leave the earth in a worse shape than we started it into. What we then did was to try to understand how this will hit our business. And what we came up with is different types of scenarios. And as Statsbygg is not one thing, we do have different offers to the Norwegian property market. We need to understand how the technology and sustainability will hit the different offers that we are delivering. How will technology change the way we are executing projects? How will sustainable demands hit the way we operate our buildings? What will our government ask for us in the future in regards to advices regarding sustainability? We need to understand how these two drivers will hit the different offers, and it might hit totally different in the different offerings that we have. So what we did was also then this actually led to our digital strategy. So what we did was we still have the same strategic objectives, which is the colorful top. And then we also made what Alf actually states as an ambition for digital, or ambition for innovation. We want to still be the preferred advisor for the state of Norway regarding building issues. We still want to have a position in the execution of of building projects. We want the market and the vendors and the whole industry to look upon Statsbygg saying, hey, they are doing cool stuff. They're actually moving the industry forwards. And we also want an efficient and user-oriented way to operate our buildings. And if you look at the portfolio of buildings in Statsbygg, it goes from the outside toilet, utedo, on Finnmarksvidda, to the new governmental buildings in Oslo. It's not one way to actually innovate on our portfolio. Sometimes I wish I was building only one thing. But we need to differentiate the way we innovate, and then it needs to be more user-oriented. Also, as Alf Rehn pointed out, it needs to be useful. And enablers for innovation in our context, and I believe it's pretty much the same for you guys in the audience, is different enablers that Statsbygg also need to discuss and invest in and work on continuously to actually be able to deliver. We need to invest on data. How is Statsbygg going to become more data-driven? We need to discuss governance. Who is actually going to decide what we do when, for what purpose? How are we actually working with technology? And how do we invite and collaborate with industry on what types of issues? And of course, the last one is competence. One thing is our competence and capabilities inside Statsbygg, but we need also to discuss with the market and the vendors. How can the vendor and market actually also bring in competence that we don't have internally? And we believe it's a lot. So how did we go about to enable this and establish this? And this is something you could write down, because at the moment, at least, it's a success. What we did first is to ensure buy-in in the organization. And as I stated, this innovation strategy, the digital strategy, the ambition, it comes with a necessary amount of investments. You need to get the top management on board. So what we did was to enable discussions and workshops with the whole management team. And we also made a prioritization on what and when. And we are also agreeing that there are capabilities in the management that we in parallel need to work on. Not everyone in Statsbygg's top lead management understands data or technology. So how could we actually enable them and raise their knowledge enough to become good advisors for our company? What we also did was, and this was also something that Alf mentioned, what we saw very early on is that there were a lot of innovation projects. There were even projects with vendors innovating on our projects without us knowing it. There was a lot of gut-based innovations going all the time. And one of the innovations was actually automating the documentation process to operations, FTV documentation. And we were investing in machine learning. There was a lot of discussions, a huge innovation project, until there was a guy in the operation saying, hey, why are you doing all that stuff with all that documentation? We don't use it. So we're actually innovating and solving the wrong problem. So what we've been doing now is to ensure that this is not a line management exercise. It's actually anchored in the need of the different users. And this is super crucial for solving the right problem and ensure a good implementation plan when you're done. So what we're now establishing is innovation groups with different purposes. And myself, our CFO, is not going to like my next sentence, but we are now focusing on the advisory services, the product development and execution, and operations. All innovation on economy, HR systems, data, is next step. So we are now focusing a lot on what should we do next on the different types of offerings Statsbygg is delivering in the value chain. And what kind of people do we need to bring in to ensure that all the ideas are elaborated on and contextualized to the actual need. And what we are doing in parallel is also ensuring more transparency. Very early on, being a super first edition, we launched something we called Utviklingskilden, which is just one single source of truth of what is happening, How are we doing stuff? What is the process? What are the prioritization mechanisms? What is decided to move on? How do we enable different type of innovation ideas to be processed in the organization? And also, when things are decided, to give them a good communication site to be shared more openly. And then, when things are decided, we also saw that we had a very bad track record of execution of ideas and innovation projects. So what we did was to look into the framework. Hey, when things are decided, how is things, enabled by different roles and competencies and reporting and implementation strategies? And one of the things that we saw is that we weren't able to handle the ambidextrosity or something in English, the tohendighet in Norwegian, like the really radical, difficult innovations and the smaller incremental improvement ideas. So what we did was that we separated a function in the organization to handle different types of ideas. And then they are now discussing with the core teams, hey, is this a super radical idea, or are you able to handle it inside the existing business model, so to speak? And one of the things that we saw very early on is that we needed to actually differentiate of different types of innovation. So what we have done now is to also ensure a quick handling of smaller things that could improve the day for our people on the different building projects or sites, or even the 2,300 buildings that we have in our portfolio. Small things, fast track, and then we also have radical innovation and also new offers. Even though we are a governmental builder, we do have offers to the industry in which we need to have a tight governance on to ensure that we are allowed to build and sell and think about the business model, etc. What is also not mentioned on this slide is that different types of innovation have also different methodology to be executed on, right? So bigger stuff has a more rough framework. Smaller stuff has a quicker execution model. And this is also to enable that thinking out of the box on the super radical stuff. To give you an example, we have an idea now. What if Statsbygg enable a project without any contracts? Crazy idea. But it's really intriguing, because if you are actually going to try to radical innovate in this industry, you cannot just sit down and discuss smaller improvements on an existing contract model, and that's 342 or whatever. You need to think radical different. And if we are actually going to do that, to enable 3D printing of projects, or even design to manufacturing, like the car industry, you need to actually be able to try something totally different. But being a governmental institution or organization, if we are going to do so, we also need to handle the risk. And that's why you cannot do such a thing in the existing business. You need to take it outside the existing business and try it out and ensure that you have handled the risk in a good way. What we are also doing is we are now working much more tactical and planning the competence that we need, building on the existing, because we think there is a huge amount of competence internally, but it needs to be built and reskilled, and also to understand the context that we are working in. One of the things that we have done with huge success is to have what we call speed lunch, which is innovation lunches. We share the successes and failures and why it failed, and what they've learned. We just had a huge innovation together with a vendor trying to automate skader, buildings, roofs, grunnmur, everything, and try to automate it by pictures and machine learning, where we could identify different types of failures on buildings. What we saw is that it's actually technically possible, but we need to define what a SCADA is to be able to make the machine learning algorithms succeed. What we then saw is that, hey, this is great. We have already then approved on behalf of the whole industry that is possible, but hey, somebody in the industry needs to take the job of defining and standardizing what a SCADA is in order for us to buy it when it's ready. Just an example. So even though it was a huge success, we have decided that we are not going to push it further because then we are becoming a technology vendor or an innovator. So this is a super success. A lot of people internally, and there was also some ideas that, hey, shouldn't Statsbygg do this, also expose it externally? Which brings me on to the next, because we also believe in collaboration with industry. Some of the Norwegian audience might remember Digitization, which was a huge success and a concept a couple of years ago. We had just relaunched this concept now, which is our playground together with the industry. We call it Big Box. It's inspired by Autodesk Sandbox or all the huge technology vendors. But it's our playground in which we could bring in ideas from the industry, but also launch ideas with industry, and then invite the industry together with us to try to figure out innovative ideas to solve a problem, or even helping startups and ideas by inviting them into a project or our building and operations to try it and pilot it and then be able to scale it as a next step. So this is something that we're still working on. But it was just launched, and we are getting a lot of ideas and are planning to just launch both competitions, but also breakfast seminars like this to just inspire the industry to take some of the ideas that are coming in. So this is some of the concepts and parts of the framework that we are working with. And at the same time, we are always emphasizing that the key to innovation is effective implementation. There is hundreds of good ideas in Statsbygg, outside Statsbygg. There's a lot of people thinking what we should do, but there is only so much an organization like us are able to. And we need also to ensure a good and efficient implementation to be able to innovate even more. So with that, I'm ready for any questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Cathrine. First of all, let me ask you, do you agree with what Alfred said? He said a lot of things, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you just one thing. Do you agree with his statement that it's time to make innovation matter again? Do you agree that there's been a tendency to sort of use it as just dressing the pig?
Yeah. So I think, at least from my perspective, there has been a huge focus on technology in our industry. But what are we actually trying to solve? Mm-hmm. And how are we actually going to solve it? That is the key to success. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the big box as well, a sandbox where you can experiment. Being a government organization, you're also pretty much held back sometimes, perhaps, sometimes supported by regulations. Are there sandboxing when it comes to regulations as well, or is it just technical innovations? Or
no, all types of innovation. I think one of our objectives is to also ensure that the industry is moving forward. So Big Box is one tool in our toolbox to actually be able to deliver upon our overarching strategy. So the people that we are reporting to in the government is actually applauding Big Box and that tool in the toolbox. Mm-hmm. But of course, again, need to handle the risk, need to understand where and where not we're going, etc. But it might be technology-driven innovation, but it could also be regulations and other things that we are actually trying to push in that sandbox or Big Box.
Great. And the choosing of what to do and what not to do is perhaps a subject that we will keep for the panel where you will be a part. So I encourage you again, send your questions in to Cathrine, or I will give the questions. And I'm a behavioral scientist, so I have no idea what will happen. So please, I'm kidding, I've prepared, but we're interested in, of course, in hearing your questions. Thank you so much for now, Cathrine. Please go sit next to your friends again. Yep, give her a warm applause.